They say funerals bring closure. But all I got was a whisper that shattered my entire life. It was a gray morning, the kind where even the sky seemed to mourn. My father's funeral was everything you'd expect from a powerful man's farewell: black suits, polished shoes, tears held back behind designer sunglasses. The church smelled like lilies and old money. 200 guests, 12 flower arrangements, $6,700 in catering. Everyone showed up: lawyers, shareholders, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. Some I didn't even recognize. But they all came to honor the man who, to the outside world, was a titan, a self-made king. To me, he was just Dad. I stood next to the casket, still trying to process the fact that he was gone. My tie was too tight. My throat even tighter. My hands felt cold and useless. Everyone kept looking at me like I was supposed to say something, do something, like I was next in line to wear his crown. That's when my uncle, my dad's older brother, walked over. He leaned in, hugged me, held it longer than necessary. And then, just as he pulled back, he whispered in my ear, "Don't cry. You were never his real son anyway." I froze. Just froze. My heart skipped. My brain spun. My breath caught in my throat like it had swallowed a stone. I blinked and stared at him. He just patted my shoulder and walked away like he hadn't just dropped a bomb in the middle of my father's funeral. I looked around. No one seemed to have heard. People were mourning, dabbing their eyes, nodding solemnly. Meanwhile, I was unraveling from the inside out. Never his real son? What the hell did that mean? All my childhood memories crashed into me like broken glass. The missed birthdays, the awkward hugs, the way he never quite looked at me like he looked at my sister. The time I asked him if he was proud of me after my college graduation and he just said, "You're doing fine." Not great, not proud, just fine. Suddenly, those moments weren't just cold. They were clues. After the ceremony, I didn't go to the reception. I got in my car and drove. No destination, just away. My fingers were white-knuckling the steering wheel. I kept hearing that whisper on a loop in my head. You were never his real son anyway. Was it a joke? A lie? Bitterness? Or was it true? I called my mom. No answer. I called her again. Voicemail. I turned the car around. I needed answers. I wasn't going to sleep until I had them. When I got home, I went straight to my father's office. It still smelled like his cologne, oakwood, and power. Everything was still in its place, like he could walk back in any minute. His desk, his leather chair, his filing cabinet. Locked. I knew the code. His birthday, backward. He wasn't as clever as he liked to think. Click. The top drawer opened. Tax papers. Old client files. Receipts. Nothing unusual. Then I saw it. A sealed manila envelope. No label. Just one word handwritten in black ink. Willow. I paused. That name meant nothing to me. I opened it. Inside, there were a few papers, a hospital form, a few printed emails, and something that looked like a DNA test. I unfolded it. My name was at the top. The bottom read, "Probability of paternity, 0%. I felt the room tilt. I sat back in his chair, holding the paper like it was a live grenade. 0%. Not 99. Not even 1. 0. My fingers were trembling. My father wasn't my father. And apparently, he knew. That's when I heard the door behind me creak open. I turned. It was my mother. She looked at the paper in my hand. Her face went pale. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. I didn't say a word. She walked in slowly, sat on the edge of the couch, and buried her face in her hands. "I was going to tell you someday." That was the first time I realized something worse than being lied to is being forgotten in the truth. I asked one question. Who is my real father? She looked up at me. Her eyes were red, but there was something else in them. Something like guilt. Something like fear. She whispered, "It's not that simple." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a secret. This was a cover-up. And I had just ripped open the first layer. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my father's study until sunrise, the DNA test still clenched in my hand like a weapon. My mother had said, "It's not that simple." But that's the kind of thing people say when they've spent decades hiding the truth. When the morning light finally broke through the window blinds, I opened the rest of the envelope. There were 5 pages. Medical documents from Willow Creek Maternity Center, dated the month I was born. 2 names were blacked out. Mine wasn't one of them. But my mother's signature was at the bottom, shaky, rushed, but unmistakable. Something else caught my eye, a printed email. From my father, addressed to someone named W.L. Baxter. The subject line? Transfer of custody. Finalized. I didn't know who W.L. Baxter was, but that name would burn itself into my brain. I stood up, still dizzy, and said aloud to no one. He knew. All these years, he knew I wasn't his. And yet, he raised me, paid for my schools, put me through Stanford, taught me how to drive, gave me his last name. That counted for something, didn't it? Unless it didn't. My mother was still asleep upstairs, or at least pretending to be. I couldn't face her yet. I needed more. I needed clarity before I got lies dressed as comfort. So I did what anyone would do in my position. I broke into the one place no one ever wanted me to go, my father's private vault. He kept it in the old wine cellar behind the second bookshelf. Yeah, straight out of a movie. You slide out a copy of Atlas Shrugged, and the lock beeps. He thought he was clever. He wasn't. I watched him do it drunk once on Christmas. Inside the vault were three things: a vintage bottle of 1964 Glenfiddich, a fireproof box, and a gun. A real one. Loaded. I ignored the gun. I wasn't scared. Not yet. I opened the fireproof box. Inside were ledgers. Handwritten. Real estate transactions. Company shares. Offshore accounts. My father had been moving large sums of money, millions, over the last 8 years into something called Everline Holdings. But none of that money was listed in the public estate or will. I flipped to the last page. There it was. The last entry. Beneficiary, D. Callahan. That's me, Daniel Callahan. If I wasn't his real son, why leave me anything at all? Unless this wasn't a gift. This was a backup plan. I stood there, heart pounding, and thought, what else did he hide from me? That's when I remembered the letter my father left in the safe years ago. A sealed one. He told me, open it if anything ever happens to me. I never took it seriously, but I knew exactly where it was. Top drawer of the piano bench. Beneath the hymn books he never read. I found it. The envelope was aged and yellowing. My name was written across the front in black fountain pen ink. I opened it. Inside was a single line, typed. If you're reading this, Daniel, then the truth is already chasing you. Start with the man I kept away. Start with Carter. Carter. My cousin. He was 2 years older than me. Loud. Entitled. Bitter. We were never close. My parents avoided him like he was contagious. I just thought he was a screw-up. He never came to family holidays. Got expelled twice. Then disappeared. And now, my dad was telling me to start there? I pulled out my phone and Googled him. Turns out, Carter was doing just fine. He lived in a $4.2 million home in Napa. Owned a private security firm, which, let's be honest, probably meant he was laundering something for someone. His name was splashed across shady business deals and lawsuit settlements. But what chilled me most was the Instagram photo, posted 2 weeks before my father died. Carter, standing in front of a black Range Rover. Caption, sometimes blood wins. Wineglass, blood wins. I stared at that caption for what felt like an hour. My fingers hovered above the phone. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just drove. 3 hours later, I was outside Carter's gate. It was electric, with stone lions on either side. Of course. I buzzed in. No answer. I buzzed again. Then a voice came through. You sure you want to do this, Danny boy? His voice hadn't changed. Still smug. Still venom under silk. I didn't answer. The gate opened. I walked into the lion's den. He met me on the porch, shirtless, holding a tumbler of whiskey, middle of the day. Didn't think I'd see you here, he said. Especially not now that Daddy Dearest is gone. I didn't bother with small talk. I just said it. Tell me the truth. Carter smirked. Which part? About my father. About your father. About who I really am. He took a slow sip. You were the cover story, Danny. The PR version of a perfect family. I was the scandal. The one he buried. He stepped closer, almost nose to nose. You were never supposed to find out. Then he leaned in. And you know what's funny? He whispered. You got everything. But I got the blood. I clenched my jaw. What did you do to him? He smiled wider. Nothing you can prove. Then he walked inside and left the door open behind him. I stood there, every part of me shaking, not with fear, but something sharper. Rage. That's when I realized. I hadn't just lost a father. I'd inherited a war. And I was ready to burn every lie to the ground to win it. Carter's words followed me like smoke. You got everything. But I got the blood. I didn't sleep that night either. I stayed in a motel off Highway 29. Peeling paint, buzzing neon, paper-thin walls. The kind of place where forgotten people hide from the world. I paced the room, turning Carter's smirk over in my head like a blade. I knew I couldn't trust him, but I also knew he wasn't bluffing. He dropped a truth bomb and walked away like it was just another Monday. But I wasn't done. I wasn't close to done. The next morning, I drove back to the city and went to the law firm that handled my father's estate, Kirkland, Hawthorne and Bell. The firm had been around since Lincoln was a rumor. The receptionist tried to brush me off, said I'd need an appointment, but when I said my last name and showed them my father's death certificate, the tone shifted. They led me into a cold, oak-paneled room where an older man named Gregory Bell, gray suit, colder eyes, met me. "Daniel," he said, folding his hands. "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Don't play games," I said. "I want to see everything. The real will. The full records. All of it." He didn't blink. Just reached into a locked drawer, pulled out a red folder, and slid it across the table. "Your father was a complicated man. Tried deceitful." Gregory tilted his head. "Maybe both." I opened the folder. Inside were 2 wills. The first, the one read at the funeral. Generic. Predictable. The one where my sister inherited the house, my mother got the stock shares, and I got a token trust fund. The second, and signed. Marked. Revision draft, private. This one was different. It named me as the sole executor of Everline Holdings. It mentioned Carter by name. It detailed a protection agreement for someone labeled only as Subject Willow. Again, that name. And it had an attachment, a non-disclosure contract signed by my mother, my uncle, and a doctor I didn't recognize. I stared at the page. Why wasn't this will ever filed? Gregory exhaled slowly. "Because your father never got a chance to sign it. He died the night before our final meeting." How convenient. Sometimes the truth dies with the signature. No, I wasn't accepting that. I took pictures of everything. Gregory tried to protest. I told him to sue me. As I left the building, something clicked in my head. Subject Willow. That name again. I pulled out the original envelope I'd found in my dad's office. Checked the medical forms again. Willow Creek Maternity Center. I did a deep dive online and found something odd. Willow Creek had closed down 25 years ago after an internal investigation. Rumors of switched births. Missing records. A whistleblower who vanished. Now I was dealing with an orphaned institution tied to an unfiled will and my stolen identity. There was only one place left to go. I booked a flight to Oregon, the last known location of the former Willow Creek administrator. According to a local blog post from 10 years ago, she had relocated to a cabin near Crater Lake under a different name, Elena Ward. 3 days later, I stood on her porch. The woman who opened the door was in her 60s. Silver hair, eyes that had seen too much. "I'm not giving interviews," she said immediately. "I'm not press. My name's Daniel Callahan." The name hit her like a slap. She opened the screen door slowly. "Callahan, like Thomas Callahan?" "My father," I said. "Or the man who raised me." She hesitated. Then she stepped aside. Inside, the house was silent. No TV, no music, just a grandfather clock ticking like a bomb. "I knew this day would come," she said. "I always hoped it wouldn't." I pulled out the folder, showed her the records, the DNA test, the Willow name. "Tell me what happened." She sat down and said 4 words that cracked my spine. "You weren't supposed to live." My throat dried. "What?" "There were 2 babies born that night," she said. "One was healthy. One wasn't. Orders came from higher up. Switch them. The healthy child would go to Thomas Callahan. The other would be documented as stillborn." My legs buckled. I sat down. "You mean I was switched at birth?" She nodded. "You were the healthy one, Daniel. But your mother wasn't your mother." No, that couldn't be true. I'd seen pictures, felt her hugs, celebrated her birthdays. My mother couldn't be fake. That wasn't possible. "You're lying," I said, standing up. But she shook her head. "I wish I was. But you need to understand, Thomas saved your life. He was never supposed to take you. But he did. And others paid the price." "Who?" I demanded. "Who paid?" She walked over to an old drawer, opened it, and pulled out a photograph. A baby, wrapped in white. Her name was Willow, she said. The real daughter of Thomas Callahan. The sick one. The one they buried. Everything hit me at once. The name Willow. The sealed documents. The hidden will. The NDAs. Willow wasn't a place. She was a person. And she was the key to everything. I stared at the photo. "Are you saying?" I took her life. No, she said, eyes trembling. I'm saying they traded it for yours. And then she looked out the window. You need to go, she whispered. Why? She pointed at the driveway. A black SUV had just pulled up. I recognized it. Carter's car. I backed away from the window. My heart thundered. You let him here? I hissed. I didn't, she swore. But he's been looking. He knows. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed the documents, thanked her, and slipped out the back door into the woods. As I ran, I didn't look back. But I knew this wasn't over. I had just stolen the truth, and Carter was ready to kill for it. I ran for 20 minutes through the trees behind Elena's cabin before I stopped to breathe. Carter's SUV was still back there. I didn't know if he saw me, or if he just wanted to scare me. But I knew one thing. He was hunting me now. I hiked downhill until I found an empty road and flagged down a logging truck. The driver didn't ask questions. He just nodded when I said, "Bad family reunion." He dropped me at a gas station in the next town, where I paid cash for a burner phone and took a bus toward Portland. I sat in the back, hood up, hands shaking. The picture of baby Willow was still in my pocket, warm from my chest. I kept looking at it, thinking she was real, and they buried her story to raise mine. When I finally made it to my apartment back in the city, everything felt different. Smaller, quieter, like I was a stranger living someone else's life. I poured a whiskey and opened my laptop. Time to find the doctor. The name from the NDA was Dr. Conrad Ely, listed as a pediatric geneticist. A little digging told me he'd been suspended in the late 1990s for unethical genetic experiments and unauthorized procedures. No criminal record. No jail time. Just silence. A golden retirement package from Willow Creek and a swift disappearance. But one link led me to a closed forum post. Seeking info on Conrad Ely. Suspect involved in identity swap of newborns. Will pay for verified intel. I recognized the username, W.L. Baxter. That name again. From my father's envelope. It wasn't a name. It was an alias. I used metadata tracking and old-school sleuthing until I landed on a single IP match connected to a law firm in Chicago. W.L. Baxter was a ghost identity, used by my uncle, Lawrence Callahan. The same man who whispered to me at my father's funeral, "You were never his real son." So it was him. My uncle. He was behind the alias. Behind the NDA. Probably behind the cover-up. And I knew where he lived. I drove through the night to his estate in Lake Forest, Illinois. A mansion built like a fortress. Gates. Cameras. Statues. He was a man who loved power, and now I knew why. Because power gave him silence. Control. I waited outside his property until dawn. Then I climbed the fence. He was already awake when I made it to his office window. Maybe he expected me. Maybe he knew. The window was cracked open. I slid in and stood behind him. He didn't turn around. Just said, "You found Elena. You buried a child," I said, shaking. "You buried your own niece so I could be your legacy puppet." He turned slowly, sipping his espresso. "No, Daniel. I buried a scandal. You were the redemption." I slammed the folder on his desk. Redemption built on a grave. He looked down, then back at me. "You don't understand what your father was trying to protect." "From who?" I spat. "You? Carter?" "The truth." He stood now, stepping closer. "From the people who would have destroyed you if they knew who you really were." "Then who am I?" He smirked. "You're not a Callahan by blood, Daniel. But you were chosen. Molded. Funded. You were the project that succeeded." "Project?" I whispered. He nodded. Everline wasn't a company. It was a program. A designer-air experiment. I nearly fell backward. "You're saying I was engineered?" "Selected," he said. "From embryos that passed elite thresholds. Your real parents were donors. You were born to be perfect. Marketable. Loyal." I couldn't breathe. "You're lying." "I'm not. We paid millions for you. You were the best investment we ever made." My knees gave way. I fell into the leather chair across from him. My whole life, my identity, my achievements, my existence, it wasn't love. It was an experiment. But then, he said quietly, Willow was born. Sick. Imperfect. But with the Callahan blood. And suddenly your father changed his mind. He tried to undo it. I said, realization flooding in. He wrote a new will. Tried to tell me the truth. Yes. And that's why he had to die. My head snapped up. What? He stared at me. Cold. Flat. I didn't kill him. But I didn't stop it either. The silence stretched between us. "You'll never get away with this," I said. He laughed. Get away with what? You want to hold a press conference and cry on YouTube? Tell the world you're a lab baby? No one will care. You're not special, Daniel. You're just manufactured. That was it. I lunged. We crashed into the bookshelves. He was stronger than I expected. Years of fencing and fencing ego. He pulled a letter opener from the desk. I dodged. Threw a globe at him. It shattered. He sliced my arm. I kicked him back. We were gasping, grappling, bleeding. Then, boom. The front door burst open. 3 men in black suits stormed in, guns drawn. Freeze. They weren't cops. They weren't security. They were Everline's cleanup team. They grabbed me, yanked me backward. One hit me in the ribs. Lawrence wiped the blood from his lip. Don't kill him, he said. We need him compliant. Before I blacked out, I heard one more thing. Take him to Carter. When I came to, I wasn't in a hospital. I was strapped to a chair in a room with no windows. Cement walls. Buzzing fluorescent light above. My head throbbed. My arm stung where Lawrence had sliced it. My hands were zip-tied. My shoes were gone. And Carter was standing in front of me, perfectly clean, perfectly calm, wearing a tailored navy suit and that damn smug smile. Hey, cousin, he said. Or, should I say, prototype. I didn't answer. I just stared. You've had a busy week, he went on. Uncovering things best left buried. Visiting old ghosts. Stirring up dead names like Willow. I clenched my jaw. She was your sister. She was a liability, he replied coldly. Weak. Born broken. She would have destroyed everything the Callahans built. You were the perfect replacement. He walked behind me, circling like a wolf. See, Daniel, you were a PR masterpiece. An orphan with brilliance in his blood. No real lineage, no dirty history. Just clean, marketable success. Until you started digging. He stopped, leaned close to my ear. And now you're a problem. I laughed, even though it hurt. That's what scares you? That the problem is smarter than you. His smile twitched. You think this ends with a YouTube confession? A blog post? No, cousin. This is bigger than some family drama. The Callahans run biotech, military contracts, national surveillance. You think we care what Reddit says? I spat on the floor. You're not a dynasty. You're a cult with stock options. That earned me a punch to the ribs. He sighed. I didn't want to get violent. But we need to know something. He snapped his fingers. A door opened. 2 guards entered, dragging someone between them. Elena. Her face was bruised. Her lip was split. Let her go. I shouted, jerking against the chair. Carter squatted in front of me, calm as ever. She told you about Willow. About the lab. About your precious rewritten fate. He pulled out a tablet, tapped something. The screen lit up with a series of video files, security footage from the Willow Creek facility. Dated. Grainy. But unmistakable. One of them showed my father, Thomas Callahan, standing over a newborn in an incubator. He was crying. Not out of grief. Out of rage. The audio was crackly, but I heard fragments. You said she'd be strong. This wasn't the deal. Replace her. No one needs to know. I looked away. Carter whispered. He signed the order, Daniel. Not me. Not Uncle Lawrence. Him. I shook my head, tears stinging. No. He changed. He tried to fix it. That's second will. He tried, Carter said softly. But trying doesn't erase what he did. He stood, wiped his hands like it was over. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a statement. Say everything you uncovered was fake. Delusions. Conspiracy. He leaned in, eyes dead. If you don't, Elena dies first. I looked at her. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She just stared at me and nodded once, like, don't you dare. I breathed hard. You kill her, I'll burn your world down. Carter chuckled. You don't have matches. But I have memory. And I know where the bodies are now. He hesitated. That was his tell. His flaw. He thought control was absolute. But I'd been learning. I whispered. You missed something. He tilted his head. What? I mailed the folder to someone before I came here. That wasn't entirely true. But he didn't know that. His eyes narrowed. To who? You'll find out when they do. He cursed under his breath, turned away, started barking orders to the guards. Trace his communications. Check his apartment. Pull traffic cameras. Get me that damn envelope. In the chaos, I leaned close to Elena. She mouthed. Air duct. 10 feet. I nodded. When Carter stormed out, leaving 2 guards behind, I slumped like I'd passed out. One came closer. I waited for the right second. Then I kicked the chair back, slammed into his knee. The other moved fast, but I was faster. I head-butted him, rolled, grabbed the broken metal chair leg, and smashed the light. In the darkness, Elena moved, swift and practiced. She'd loosened her zip ties with a pin in her sleeve. Military precision. She wasn't just a nurse. "Who are you?" I asked, breathless. "No time," she said, ripping the vent cover off the wall. "Crawl now." We wriggled through the duct, every heartbeat like thunder. Somewhere behind us, alarms blared. Outside the compound, deep in a forested estate, I saw a fence. Elena pointed to a truck. "That's ours if we're lucky." We ran. Gunshots cracked behind us. I dove behind the wheel. She hot-wired it like she'd done it before. We tore through the woods, crashing through brush and over roots. I looked in the rearview mirror. Black SUVs behind us. Flashing lights. Dogs barking. "You said you weren't just a nurse," I shouted. "I wasn't," she said. "I used to work for them. I designed the original ID protocols for Everline. Then I found out what they were doing." "And you ran?" "I exposed what I could. But they buried it. Killed the whistleblowers. Paid me to disappear." We burst out onto a highway. A helicopter thumped above. "Where are we going?" I yelled. "To find someone who can prove you weren't just a prototype," she said. "Who?" She handed me a photo. Of a woman. Blonde. Sharp eyes. Familiar somehow. "Elena," I said, staring at the photo. "Who is this?" She looked at me, her voice steady. "She's your biological mother. And she's still alive." The road twisted through pine forests and fog like something out of a dream. Or a nightmare. Elena drove fast, her face tense, eyes scanning the rearview mirror every few seconds. We hadn't seen Carter's SUVs for hours, but we both knew that meant nothing. He didn't need to chase. He just needed to wait. I clutched the photograph she gave me, fingers trembling. Her name was Dr. Olivia Strand. Mid-50s. PhD in biogenetics. Once a lead researcher for a company called AstraHume, a partner lab to Everline back in the late 90s. She vanished after testifying against a secret gene mapping project in 2001. And now, Elena was telling me this woman was my mother. Why didn't she raise me? I asked. "She wasn't allowed to," Elena said. "You were extracted at 48 hours. She thought you died. That was part of the protocol, to sever all emotional ties." My throat clenched. "And they called me the prototype." She never signed off on it. She was just a donor. Until she realized what they'd done, then she blew the whistle. But by then, you were already gone. Assigned to the Callahans. Assigned. Like a project. A placement. Not a person. We reached a cabin near the Canadian border, moss-covered roof, chimney smoke curling up like a signal flare. Elena parked behind a shed and killed the engine. "She lives here?" I asked. "She hides here," Elena corrected. I stepped out, heart hammering, legs numb. We approached slowly. Then the door creaked open, and there she stood. Olivia Strand. She was older than the photo, of course. Her hair now streaked with gray, eyes shadowed with suspicion. But the moment she saw me, something shifted in her. She whispered, "Oh my God." I stopped on the porch. "I'm Daniel," I said. Her hand went to her mouth. She stumbled back a step, almost like she'd seen a ghost. Then, voice cracking, she said, "They told me you died." Inside, the fire crackled. I sat in an armchair. She brought me tea, her hands shaking. Elena stood watch by the window, always alert. "I never signed the full consent form," Olivia said. "They lied. They forged my name. When I found out the truth, how they were engineering children for elite families, I tried to stop them. They used me as the replacement," I said, staring at the flames. "After the real Callahan child, Willow, was born with a defect." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "You were never supposed to be raised like that." As to Brand, I pulled out the bloodied photo of Willow. Olivia's hands trembled as she took it. "She was your half-sister," she said softly. "Same donor father. Different surrogates." Suddenly, it all made sense. The Callahans had used Willow as the cover. The failed heir. But I had been the real product. The trophy child with no messy backstory. And they'd erased Olivia. Erased everything that didn't fit the myth. "I want to destroy them," I said. "All of them. Lawrence. Carter. The companies. The program." She looked me in the eye, and I saw it then, not just sorrow. "Fire. You're not the first to say that," she whispered. "But maybe you'll be the last." She stood, walked to a cabinet, and unlocked a hidden drawer. Inside were 2 hard drives, sealed files, and a leather-bound notebook. She placed them in front of me. This is the original donor map, she said. Names, labs, embryo logs, surrogacy contracts. Everything they used to create you. My hand hovered over the files. Why keep it? Because one day, I hoped someone like you would knock on my door. A sound outside made Elena move to the window. She tensed. We've got movement. 3 black SUVs, 2 blocks down. No plates. They found us, Olivia said. I stood fast. Can we move? No time, Elena said. We hold or we die. Olivia handed me a flash drive. That's the only backup. If they take it, it's over. I took it, shoved it deep in my boot. What's the plan? She pulled a rifle from under the floorboards. The plan is, we don't let them rewrite the story again. The first shot shattered the front window. We dropped. Another burst of gunfire tore through the walls. Elena fired back, clipped one of the men near the truck. I crawled to the back room, grabbed a wrench, and yanked open the escape hatch in the floor. A tunnel, dug and reinforced. Olivia had prepared for this. Elena, I shouted. Go. But she was at the front, covering our exit. You take the files and get out, she barked. I'll slow them down. Like hell you will, I said, pulling her back. She pushed me. If you die, everything dies with you. She slammed the hatch shut and locked it behind me. I screamed, pounded on it. More gunfire above. I crawled through the darkness, tears streaming down my face. 30 minutes later, I surfaced in the woods. Smoke was rising from the cabin. Flames. They burned everything. I limped through the trees until I hit a dirt road. A car was waiting, an old contact Elena had arranged days ago. He didn't speak, just drove. I clutched the flash drive in my boot the whole time. I had nothing left now. No father, no family, no fake identity. But I had something more dangerous. The truth. And I was going to use it. I was done running. No more shadows. No more whispers. No more pretending I didn't know what I knew. Elena was gone. Olivia, my mother, was likely dead too. Burned alive for protecting me. The Callahans wanted to silence me. Bury me in lies, like they'd done to everyone else. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They let me live. And I had their secrets in my boot. The next morning, I crossed into Montreal with a fake passport and $12,000 in cash, Elena's final gift, hidden in a hollowed-out book. I rented a cheap room above a bakery, pulled the flash drive from my boot, and plugged it into the burner laptop she'd given me. There it was. Everything. Donor profiles for all Callahan children, none of them biological. Genetic engineering requests, IQ thresholds, muscle density, eye color. Contracts from Astra Hume, Everline, and a third shell company named Altura West, funneling money into black budget research. Video of Willow's diagnosis and termination orders. And one more file titled Prototype 0, D. Strand. I was the beginning. The model. A body designed. A name assigned. A life stolen. And my father, Thomas Callahan, was the architect. Not Carter. Not Lawrence. Him. The man I mourned. The man whose casket I helped carry. The man who, in the end, left me nothing but a forged inheritance and a funeral full of liars. I leaned back in the chair and shook. Grief didn't even know where to begin. But rage? Rage knew exactly where to go. I uploaded the drive to 5 encrypted clouds. Scheduled releases. Sent copies to whistleblower channels, journalists, watchdog groups. But it wasn't enough. I needed to speak. So I called a name I hadn't said in years. Mason Ridley. A friend from college. Now a high-profile podcast host. Millions of followers. Deep distrust of corporate America. Just the right amount of reckless. He answered on the first ring. Daniel, it's me. I thought you were dead. Not yet. But I've got something. And I'm ready to talk. 2 days later, we were live. Mason flew to Montreal. No intro music. No frills. Just a camera, a mic, and me. I sat down, looked straight into the lens, and began. My name is Daniel Strand. You've probably heard of me as Daniel Callahan, the billionaire heir. But none of that was real. I wasn't born. I was built. Then I told everything. From the funeral to the whisper. From Willow's file to Carter's threat. From the lab to Olivia. From betrayal to blood. I showed the flash drive. The documents. The donor map. And finally, the photo. The one of Thomas Callahan standing over Willow's crib, his face full of fury. The one with a timestamp, audio, everything. The truth. By the time the podcast ended, it had already gone viral. 27 million views in 6 hours. FBI subpoenas. Protests outside Everline and Astrium. Calls for congressional hearings. Hashtags. Hashtag Callahan lies. Hashtag built not born. Hashtag Willow was real. But not everyone was celebrating. Carter made a statement on national TV. My cousin Daniel is deeply unwell. He's exploiting our family's grief for attention. The Callahans categorically deny all his accusations. Classic. I figured he'd try to run. Or silence me again. But I wasn't done yet. I flew to D.C. under a new name. Testified in front of a special committee. Released internal memos. Introduced Olivia's logs as evidence. And then, the final blow. A woman in the back of the hearing room stood up. Her face pale. Her arms scarred. Her eyes trembling. She said one sentence. My name is Willow Callahan. I'm alive. The room erupted. She wasn't dead. She'd faked her own death with Olivia's help and disappeared into witness protection. But when she saw the broadcast, she knew it was time. Time to rise. Carter was arrested 2 days later. So was Lawrence. 37 executives across 3 countries. The Callahan name was scorched. And me? I walked away. No more boardrooms. No more brands. Just the truth. And one final letter in my pocket. My father's second will. Turns out, he did try to undo it. The guilt had eaten him alive. He left it unsigned, but real. A note scribbled at the bottom in his handwriting. To my son, you were never my blood, but you were my redemption. Forgive me, if you can. I folded it, put it back in my coat, walked out of the courtroom into the rain. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. So tell me, if everything you knew about your family turned out to be a lie, would you burn it down or walk away? Drop your answer below. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button.